As long as you're. Okay, very good. Hello, everyone. It's 6:02 p.m. and we are ready to begin the Planning Commission workshop meeting for Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. And I am Wayne Beeler. I am the chairman of the City of Reading Planning Commission. Joining us on Zoom are Peter Ryan, James Harris, Nelson DeLeon, and Wilson Feasey, who is the vice chairman. I see that, we have quite a few people with us today. So we will get started and start with the McDonald's redevelopment at 9th and Spring. So I will turn it over to Jerome for the introduction, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, this is the McDonald's at 9th and Spring. They've been to the one-stop session to discuss their project, and they are ready to submit a sketch plan and discuss their project with you. So there are representatives here from McDonald's, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Floor is yours for a presentation. I'm from Bowler.
You might be on mute.
Sorry. Hey, I'm Tom Kriebel here from Bowler. I'm also here with Kirsten Calabro, also Bowler, and along with Rich Alt from McDonald's. He's with the owner-operator team, and he'll be here to field any operational questions. Kirsten, do you want to pull up the aerial?
Let me know if everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes.
So to kick this off, this current site is located at 901 Spring Street. It is a McDonald's with a drive-through in the CN Commercial Neighborhood District, and where a restaurant is permitted by right. Now, this particular site is part of McDonald's reinvestment program, where every few years, sites can become eligible for the opportunity to upgrade and improve the site. Looking at the existing site, it's located here at the corner of 9th and Spring, and then with Moss to the east, and the Mill Street Alley there to the north. Kirsten, if you just want to bring up the survey, we can go through some of that. So as the site stands today, it is currently roughly 3,500 square foot McDonald's restaurant with two-way access coming from North 9th Street and Moss Street to the east, and then one-way out egress on North 9th Street at the north there. It's also important to know that currently the drive-through cuts through a portion of the Mill Street Alley, and the Mill Street Alley is currently blocked off with bollards. From a parking standpoint for the existing restaurant, there are 33 existing spaces. And regarding pedestrian access onto the site, currently they can access mainly from North 9th Street. Kirsten, if you also want to go through some site photos just to give a little bit of perspective. So this is at the intersection of 9th and Spring, looking into the McDonald's site. And then this is at the east side of the site from Moss Street. And then now looking at what we are planning on proposing here would be a new McDonald's prototype building, roughly a 3,700 square foot building. However, there will be a walk-in box expansion onto this building, mainly because to make up some extra storage room due to the existing building having a basement, and now the proposed building will no longer be providing that. We went and redesigned the drive-through on the site to kind of give some better vehicle maneuverability and to also pull any improvements out of the Mill Street alley. And we're looking to maintain access onto that alley, whereas prior there were bollards there. Now we're looking to remove those. To continue with access onto the site, we're holding the drive-through or driveway at the south end of the site there on 9th Street. However, it will now become a one-way drive. And then looking east off of Moss Street, that will only be a one-way egress, and that'll be a do not enter. And then looking more north, if someone were to pull out onto 9th Street, that would be a one-way egress. To get into some further improvements, as you notice, there was a trash enclosure in the northeast corner of the site. We're looking to maintain that, but we are providing a new trash enclosure. To look at pedestrian access for the site, we are continuing to provide pedestrian access along North 9th Street, where pedestrians could utilize the stair access there. And we are providing ADA pedestrian access from Spring Street. As you can see on the proposed plan, McDonald's is planning on providing replacement sidewalk all along the property boundaries. Along with this, they will be providing replacement trees as well. And this does not reflect a final design. There has been no formal landscape design, but this is the current intent, to replace the trees due to the existing trees currently breaking up the sidewalk and making for some crumbled sidewalk. I want to stop here and see if there's any questions strictly just from a site perspective.
Well, can you go back to the picture that's presented by Kirsten of the intersection of 9th and Spring?
Mhm.
Okay, you can see there that at the right there, there's a no turn sign there, which means that no one who is traveling eastbound on Spring Street can make a left-hand turn onto 9th Street and enter the McDonald's. In fact, I'm tired of holding my horn and trying to tell people to read the 3 no turn signs there, that they can't make a left, and then they give me the finger, make the left and go into the McDonald's. So in other words, you can't really cut off the Moss Street access, because the people who are traveling eastbound technically have to make a left on the Moss Street to get into the McDonald's.
Thank you. We can definitely look at addressing that and discuss that with McDonald's and try to incorporate that.
Is Tim here?
No.
Okay. The other thing that you will probably need to know is if I need to double check with Public Works, but I think Spring Street's going to be resurfaced this year. Because all the traffic lights were replaced fact, yeah, the traffic lights you had in that picture are the old traffic lights. The traffic lights were replaced this year, they're gonna have to redo that entire intersection to put down new striping, new crosswalks, all of that good stuff.
How many proposed parking spaces will there be?
We will be proposing 20 parking spaces. Sorry, I think I might have missed that originally, but yes, there will be 20. And
So McDonald's felt that there was,
sorry,
so McDonald's felt that there was no need to provide more, but provide less. As people were using the drive-through.
yeah. So with newly proposed McD's, much of the traffic tends to be more likely to go through the drive-through, and then therefore there aren't as many spaces needed. You can see the proposed McDonald's only has 38 seats, which is quite a few less than what you might see in like an older McDonald's. So the requirement to have multiple parking spaces isn't as necessary. And the parking on site is compliant. I believe there's 16 required spaces.
So that would depend on what your maximum amount of employees would be at any given shift. Currently, our parking requirement is 1 per 4 seats plus 1 for every 2 employees. So based on your seating, the 38 seats, you would need 10 parking spaces. And so you would just have to make sure that you wouldn't have more than 20 employees on any given shift.
Yes, Kirsten here is showing the parking count. We accounted for 12 employees.
Okay, then that will work.
When you were at your one stop, did you mention, or did McDonald's mention that there would be a second floor?
Did you say a second floor?
Yeah.
I
seem to
not
recall-
on.
Oh, I seem to recall Playland on the second floors. I may be mistaken.
Yeah,
Apparently,
not with this one. Yeah, there's no second floor on this one proposed.
No, it'll be a single floor.
Is there going to be a play area on this prototype building? I know there used
No.
to be one long time ago.
There's currently no proposed play area.
Will there be a traffic study?
If it would be required at the time of review, we could definitely provide that.
Yeah, I would, I know that you have quite a few engineers on staff, because I've gone through this before with the Lancaster Avenue rebuild. So if you could at least have your traffic engineers take a look at that 9th and Spring intersection, because that's not a standard intersection.
Mm-hmm.
And just basically what we discussed here, we discussed this briefly at staff level today, and we thought that a traffic study might be the best way to go. Just
Why
make
is
sure that
there-
everything flows.
Why is there no turns for that eastbound Spring Street traveler? I understand 9th is a one-way, but why restrict it?
Spring Street is only 60 feet wide. So they provide a left-hand turn lane so that you can go westbound on Spring and make a left-hand turn on the 8th. But therefore, there is no room to make a left-hand turn on the 9th if you're traveling eastbound on Spring Street.
Hmm.
And it's actually quite important because of the traffic bollocks that happens at Spring Street and Nickel Street. Making the availability of a left-hand turn onto 9th Street from eastbound Spring Street would even make the traffic nightmare at Spring Street and Nichols infinitely worse.
We are also revising the parking section, but everything that Emily had mentioned to you is similar. In terms of the number of parking spaces, so there'd be nothing there. Will there be EV spaces?
Currently,
And if so, you're not,
sorry, currently, we are not proposing any EV spaces. And I'm not sure we're aware of any requirement to.
if you do it, you're not gonna be penalized spaces as a result of it. But it's not gonna be an addition, it's just be a complementary requirement.
And then, Kirsten, this Emily, we spoke a little bit on the phone. We just received, the permit application with the plans yesterday in the mail. And so our clerical staff is processing it. I believe they've reached out either to you or someone else on staff. There were a couple of things that were missing on the permit application itself. But it's gonna be with yesterday's date to start processing and get you that review letter.
Okay, perfect. I don't know if I've heard from anyone, so I'll check in with McDonald's to see maybe if they were notified so I can find out, the additional information and get that to you right away.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no, definitely. Thank you. And then
And
I
if you're
did,
looking to submit, go ahead.
no, so I didn't mean to cut you off. I was gonna say, I know someone had asked about putting less spaces than what was there, what's existing today. And I know prior to us even looking into this project, we did have the owner operator team do a parking study to kind of capture their existing parking needs, just to kind of confirm that they would be able to sustain the business with only 20 parking spaces. And we did kind of have them capture peak times of peak days throughout a week. And I believe the max number of cars, parked at the time on the lot that I think they captured were 15 during that evaluation. So I did just want to kind of let you know that we did look at that and to make sure that they would be good with only going down to 20 spaces, even though we're still within code. Again, just to let you know, we did kind of look at that as well.
Yeah, please incorporate that into your traffic study.
Okay, perfect.
If you are submitting plans after you receive your zoning permit application, response from your zoning permit application, we're looking at May 7th if you're submitting the land development plan if you're ready.
Yeah, I believe based on talking to Emily, the intent was once we get the review back from the zoning comments, we may submit an application to the zoning hearing board first to obtain necessary variances and then make the formal submission to the planning commission.
That's usually the way we'd like to have it done, just in case the zoning hearing board requires any major changes to the plan. That way you don't have to go through stuff twice.
So Will was telling us that he's having issues with his audio, so I'm speak, sorry. I'm gonna try calling Will on my phone and see if he can't answer. I think this is his number. Oh, nope. Will, can you email me another number possibly that we can call you at? Or if you wanted to type in your questions or comments in the chat or in an email.
So are these boundaries all the same as they currently are? There's no additions.
Are you speaking about the property boundary?
Yeah,
Correct. This is the existing property and we're not proposing to consolidate the lot in any way.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I see that. It's been a long time since I've gone through the drive-through here. This McDonald's is actually 4 blocks from my house. So. But I see that there are 1, 2, 3. Looks like 5 parking spaces on the north side.
Mhm.
Yeah, in that area. You might want to consider marking those employee spaces. So that the employees don't park where the customers normally park, which is along which is along the parking spaces that front Spring Street.
Maybe they're not,
Yes. Sorry.
maybe they're not employee spaces. I don't know. Are they?
So
Actually, I don't
Mike-
remember parking spaces existing there now. So this would be an addition.
correct. Yes, they're currently in that location. I believe it would be like a portion of the drive-through that sits there today. We provided spaces there. Likely employees may park there. However, we are providing 2 pull forward or roll forward signs in the 2 parking spaces to the closest to 9th Street. Those would be utilized for any customers who have paid for their order and maybe if their order is going to take a little bit longer than someone else in front of them, they will pull into those spaces and they will be provided their food there.
That makes sense. The McDonald's on Burkeoman Avenue in Mount Penn has two such spaces. So I would suspect you might only need 3 spaces. I know that quite a few McDonald's employees walk past my house to go to work. I can't imagine you have too many employees actually driving to work.
So we did get Will on the phone. Will, you're on speaker if you wanted to make your comments or questions.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate it. Certainly, you're right. Officially, that alley is north of Middle Street, and come up with other plans. I think it's good that the bothers to be removed, and we think that it's better for emergency services to have as much access as possible. I think we have the phone, like, that needs the pretty elevation, so just wondering if the design will be proposed to be more congruent with the neighborhood. I know that that becomes design. So, that was part of what you have proposed.
I don't know if everyone was able to hear that. I can repeat if.
I
No,
cannot.
could you please repeat?
Yeah, so just a note that on the plans, it should be North Mill Street. That's the actual official name of that alley. And then he was just saying that he's glad that the bollards will be removed to give emergency services more access. And then he was just wondering if the design of the restaurant itself, I guess maybe if there was any kind of concept or pictures to make us, to see if it would be more congruent with the neighborhood.
Yes, it's actually a perfect segue into our colored building elevations here. Now these, just to note, these are prototypical, and they don't reflect any final designs for the building, but this is the current prototype that we will be running with on this site.
I would, talking about that, I would then suggest lightening lightening the gray on the, I assume that split face block, where it says McDonald's, for example, lightening that gray to kind of match the limestone for the building across the street, which was the old Pennsylvania Trust Company. Rest of the buildings in that neighborhood are pretty much brick, and you probably don't want to go with a red anymore. I noticed that McDonald's wants to get red, but I don't know if you can see the screen, but that was the old Citizens, Citizens Bank. That is now empty. But directly across the street was the old Pennsylvania Trust Company, and that has similar coloration. That has similar limestone on it.
Yeah,
I
we can
I would go with it.
we can definitely take that into account.
Yeah. No, I know your designers have always been very helpful at taking into consideration our comments.
If there's no further questions on the building elevations, we can roll into signage. So for proposed signage, if I kind of start up the drive-through and kind of work my way around the site, we're looking to propose a few new drive-through signage, along with utilizing some of the existing menu boards on site. We will be providing typical McDonald's welcome and exit signs, priority spaces, which we already talked about, the two at the northwest corner of the lot, the two pull forward. There will be a few more, such as mobile order and courier pickup to the south, adjacent to the ADA spaces. We are looking to propose a new road sign. Kirsten, if you just want to show a visual for that. This is currently what we are proposing on the plans. And this particular sign, as you can see, it 20-foot height, which is similar to the sign that is existing there today. And this particular sign will also be providing a electronic message board.
So where exactly is that road sign located again?
That'll be in pretty much almost the exact same location as the existing one.
Okay.
Right there at the southwest corner there.
Okay. Just as an FYI, there are some restrictions on moving images on boards. They can switch out images, so I believe it's either 6 or 10-second intervals. I'd have to double check, and I'll do that during my review with that permit that came in. But it can't be like a continuous video.
Okay, noted.
Yeah, and they're pre-programmed or they're programmable, Emily, so I know McDonald's will be able to change it. But yeah, if we establish those changing guidelines, it's not anything that flashes or it's, it's not a scrolling. It
Yeah.
usually is something that has an instantaneous change. It's not something that fades out or anything like that. But yeah, we definitely can put, once you're done your review, we can put parameters on how often it changes and things like that.
Okay,
Unlike the scrolling electronic sign on the one on in Sinking Spring.
No, it should not be like that one. Is that what you asked, or you're saying unlike that one,
Yeah,
right?
it cannot be, it cannot be like that. No.
Yes.
Of course, they have 3 electronic messaging boards on that one. I don't know how Sinking Spring let them get away with all that signage that they have.
I think other than that, that's pretty much what we had, right, Tom? Was there anything else to
No,
cover?
unless anyone else has any further questions, that's I think we covered everything.
I'll turn it over to the commissioners at this point for any other comments.
It's a nice project.
Thank you.
So. I'm actually surprised that you're doing it so quickly. It seems to me that the previous rebuild wasn't done that long ago.
Keep it fresh.
Yeah, I won't speak for Rich and his team, but just trying, it's really coming down to a lot of the efficiencies of the drive-throughs these days. And with the volume of sales that his store does, it is definitely a drive-through situation or ideal place. And then just he needed a little more room, right, Rich? You guys
Oh.
just booming over there.
The efficiency of that restaurant is really lacking compared to what we have in other locations. And this will give us a third drive-through window, which helps makes the drive-through run a little faster. And then just the basement is brutal in that store. So it did have a fairly recent interior upgrade, which is nice, but yeah, it didn't do much for the kitchen.
Yeah, and I agree.
The other question that I have. Oh, go ahead, Nelson.
No, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
And I actually kind of hate to bring this up, but talking about the drive-through. We did have one of the drive-in people shot to death about 10 years ago, maybe. I forget how long it was.
longer than that.
Maybe even longer than that. So I don't know if the design team is thinking about safety for Rich's team. Just because of that incident, and lucky to say, I'm happy to say it's been a lot longer than I remember it.
Yeah, the 2 drive-through windows that are there now carry bulletproof glass, and the third, so that then they would be all new in the new building, and a walk-up window as well on the Spring Street side. Although Kirsten's group doesn't really handle that part of the building, we have talked with our project management group about all 4 of those windows having bulletproof glass.
Yeah, Rich, and I think I also heard your inside vestibules might also have
Correct.
bulletproof glass. So yeah, definitely, I know that is part of the design.
So I know you said that it's not included, but, is there a possibility to add a play area? And I'm only asking because I know there used to be one many moons ago, and I know some staff kind of expressed, interest in, in just maybe bringing something like that back to that area.
It's not something as the owner operator that we're interested in. Those are just very difficult these days with cleaning requirements and health inspections, and McDonald's does quite a number of inspections each year on those, and just keeping those up, and unfortunately, especially for the area, we think it would be very difficult. Also takes a lot of space, which we really don't have here. So it's not really something that we're looking at. We've McDonald's doesn't allow out playlands anymore, so they all have to be enclosed in the building. And we've only got a couple of those. We have 53 stores. I want to say we have 5 playlands left.
All right, that's all I'd ask. Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else from anyone?
One thing I wanted to check is, I don't know if someone talked about this, but the aspect of handicapped parking.
Oh, could you point out the handicap parking spaces, please?
Yeah, right there at the south side of the site along Spring.
Okay. And then I don't know if you use DoorDash or whoever, that would be the spaces to the west, I guess.
Yes, there are a few to the both right and left of those spaces.
Okay. And once again, I apologize, Nelson. Did you have anything else to comment?
No, that's quite right. The comment I was gonna make is just a second Peter comment that it's good to see that they're making some changes to that McDonald's as the only one that's in the hood. And I'm glad to see that they're making changes to the drive-through, because sometimes I've gone there and it's become like a bit complicated. So I just park and go inside because it wasn't smooth as other ones. And the drive-through is kind of a bit narrow. So since somebody got shot there, sometimes I say, well, I'm not gonna go in through there. So I'm glad to see that that is being renovated and making it more feasible to provide a faster service, which is what everybody wants nowadays.
James, did you have something to add?
Yeah, this question is for my 17-year-old daughter who just walked by and heard this going on, and this is our neighborhood McDonald's. How long will it be closed during the renovation? Or will it be closed?
So Kirsten, I'll answer and then you can jump in. Typically we're about 120 days. When we did Elizabethtown rebuild 2 years ago, we were 107 days. So given, a little bit tighter space, in the downtown area or in the, the neighborhood area, probably somewhere around the 4-month time frame. As we have it kind of sketched out, it would be the January, February, March, April timeframe, back open for late spring, summer. That all depends on quite a number of things from this point, but that's how we would look at it.
All right, thank you.
Very good. I think everyone had really had some great questions there. And I believe the design team and the owner have have some good have some good comments to go on as they produce the plans that will eventually be submitted to us. So I want to thank everyone from Rich and his team for coming in today and giving us a preview of this because I think the biggest thing, like I said, is that intersection at 9th and Spring that you might not have considered when you worked on the layout for how people for the ingress and egress. So with that, I think we can move on unless there's an objection from anyone on the commission. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for your
And
time and
Thank you.
allowing.
see you soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank
now.
you.
Yep. Bye.
The next up on our agenda is the zoning and salvo amendments, the phase 2 revisions.
Yes, we had a staff meeting and then there was various discussions on the adaptive reuse portions of the ordinance. And it was determined that the adaptive reuse would be permitted by right within the CC zoning district and special exception in all other zoning districts. Just a few minor edits for the rest of the way. We sent these back to the county for review. There was also a small edit within the off-street parking areas, and that was for edits for parking within the CC zoning district as well. So those have been sent back to the county. It was requirements for the number of off-street parking spaces shall not apply to the permitted residential uses within the CC zoning district. And then as a follow-up, then just as a corrective measure, we also sent the saldo amendments to the county for review as well. So they have 30 days to respond, so that we should get our comments back prior to our April 30th meeting. And at that time, we can make an official recommendation.
Okay, sounds good. We're coming down to the wire on this one. That's great.
We may also do a modification to the phase 1 amendments, which is very minor. It's been something that's been discussed quite a bit by staff. So with that, yeah, we'll probably send those back in, and that way everything can be packaged and sent to the city council for consideration when everything's ready to go.
Sounds great. Okay, any questions or comments on the zoning and saldo amendments? Okay. We will then go on to the transit-oriented development overlay district. I'll have Jerome do the introduction, and we have Peter Simone here with us to answer any questions. So go ahead, Jerome.
Let's just turn it over to Peter.
Okay, sounds great.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for your time. Thanks for letting me attend remotely, and I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. And tonight I'm going to give you a update on the progress of our project. Let me know if you can see my screen, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. And okay, so just to refresh your memories, our firm was hired by the Greater Reading Chamber Alliance to develop TOD ordinances, and we last met with you. We last met with you back on October 17th, where we sort of gave you an introduction to this work. And I should mention this work was precipitated by the initiative to restore rail service to the city of Reading and a couple other municipalities along the Schuylkill River, and a studies being completed by Stantec, where they're looking at recommended locations for the new train station. And I think at this point they've narrowed that down to the brew pub, the old train station location, and also the green space behind the transportation center, both of course on the Franklin Street corridor. In terms of our work, just again, very quickly, I'm going to go through a few slides to tell you who's working on this and what our approach would be, and then some, I think, really positive things that Jerome has already mentioned in terms of our working with staff to make some tweaks to the ordinance that you're going to be considering. So again, Simone Collins has been working with the Greater Chamber, and also we've met several times with staff. This is our project steering committee, members from the city and the surrounding area, and everybody's been really helpful in helping us get through this work. Also, we have a larger Franklin Street Station working group. You probably can't read all these names, but it's a larger group that includes folks like David Hunter from the county, and many others whom I'm sure you know, Tom Frawley from the Rail Authority. So they've been instrumental and very helpful. And this is our schedule. Again, tonight, April 16th, we're meeting with you for the second time. We are going to be doing a similar presentation next week to City Council to bring them up to date on our work. That's going to be Monday the 22nd. On the 25th, Dave Myers, we're going to be participating in a community forum that I'm sure you're all familiar with, going over this work and also the work of Stantec with the station locations. And then we're going to proceed again through the work, and we hope to have a final ordinance, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I think we're about halfway there already by September, end of September. So in terms of some of the work that we've done, we've conducted a number of interviews with other municipalities and also some developers. You can see the developers listed on the left side of your screen, and also the names and authorities that we've worked or talked to. We talked to former Director Metz, and we're going to talk to the new director for the Parking Authority. We've spoken with Darlene Heller at Bethlehem, Greg Downing at the Transit Authority, Borough Manager in Pottstown, planners in the city of Pittsburgh, planners in the city of Philadelphia, the manager in Phoenixville, and also David Farrar at the Santana Arena to get their perspectives on things regarding adaptive reuse. Because as we got into the study, you know, again, we were hired under the broad category of developing transit-oriented development ordinances. We found that really it's a two-phase project. One is looking at the adaptive reuse of vacant or underutilized properties, primarily for residential and some commercial uses. And, you know, certainly your existing ordinances in the downtown are conducive to TOD because they're dense. So our first step was to look at the ordinance that Jerome just mentioned earlier this evening and see if we could make some tweaks to it to maybe make it a little more efficient for the private sector while still protecting the community interest in the city. And then and our common wisdom was that until the adaptive reuse market is fully or more fully utilized, meaning taking existing buildings and reusing them for residential uses primarily, and some commercial uses, new construction's probably not in the cards for the immediate future, both because of in order to justify costs for new construction, one thing, of course, is interest rates would certainly affect the adaptive reuse market, but until the adaptive reuse market's built out, there's probably not going to be enough financial incentive to make new structures feasible. And so the second part is new construction, where we're going to look at a TOD overlay, which I'll mention in a minute. So initially, at least, and I should also mention the other thing that's come up with our discussions with everyone is the idea for workforce housing. And workforce housing is not subsidized housing, or it's not low income housing. It's defined as rents that are set between 50 and 80% of the area median income, as defined by HUD. So that on a larger project, the idea would be a percentage, 5 to 10% of, let's say, the total dwelling units of a project could be designated as workforce housing that they would rent for a lower rental. And these are typically done in communities to make housing more affordable for teachers, policemen, firefighters, healthcare workers, etc. So we haven't come up with a way to incentivize that yet for adaptive reuse. That could be some continuing discussion as we get further into this, but I think everyone's interested in that, and it's something that's of interest in many communities, not only in Reading. So in terms of the adaptive reuse projects, Jerome and other members of the planning staff have shared with us some of the existing adaptive reuse projects that have happened in the city. You can see this half-mile radius centered around the approximate location of the proposed train station, and there's been a number of projects totaling in the neighborhood of 420 units that have either been built or approved in recent history. If we look at that half-mile radius in terms of census tracts, we get a little different area for that. So we'll be looking at this in terms of our overlay district for TOD housing, which we'll talk about in a minute. And of course, you're familiar with your current zoning map. And as Jerome mentioned, one of the, I think, positive tweaks to the ordinances that you're going to be considering and City Council is going to be considering is making the CC Commercial District adaptive reuse projects by right. So no one has to go through a special exception, which again, the fewer special exceptions necessary, hopefully the easier the project is. There's fewer unknowns. And so that's, we think, a very positive change that staff has made to the ordinances that you're considering. In terms of the recommendations for adaptive reuse, and I'll go through these relatively quickly, and certainly Jerome and Emily and others certainly welcome your comments. As you know, staff has been working on these changes for some time, and the current adaptive reuse process, as you know, is a two-step process. One is the adaptive reuse must go through land development, and that's been specifically called out in the ordinance revisions, so that there's a public process that comes before your body for a proposed project. And then the other step, of course, is where necessary to obtain special exceptions for a variety of things for adaptive reuse. And so we think, generally we agree with this approach. And again, our recommendations have been aimed at trying to reduce, if possible, the number of special exceptions that an applicant has to go through. So we started working from the November 28th draft of the ordinances, and the first minor change that was done, and this is very minor, is we've suggested, and staff has included, a permitted use under the adaptive reuse definition, so that adaptive reuses include things that were permitted uses. So that's a minor tweak. And in addition, as I mentioned, and Jerome may have mentioned, subdivision land development plan is required for the adaptive reuse application, which again, I think formalizes a process that really has sort of been in place. Another recommendation was, and Jerome also already mentioned this, that we've we suggested and staff agreed that to eliminate a special exception in the CC district. And we think the reasoning behind this is solid, that in a CC district, most adaptive reuses are going to be going to be very compatible with what's already happening in the CC district. So the elimination of a special exception in the CC district makes some sense. In the other districts, it's still going to remain a special exception. And again, we get the logic of that because in some of these districts, especially in some of the R districts, an adaptive reuse or may not be as compatible as they are going to be in the CC district. So again, we think this makes some sense, but the change is a good one. So again, just looking at your CC district, you know that area. So again, it's a pretty big geographical area. So again, we think the number of special exceptions will be slightly reduced here by that provision. Under our recommendation 4 was that that the special exception under lot and area dimensional requirements should only be required when the adaptive reuse is going from a less intense use to a more intense use. So that the reasoning here is if there's an existing building, it met the lot and area requirements under that existing use, and as long as the use isn't becoming more intense, the idea of putting that applicant through a special exception for an existing building that's not going to change its footprint, that's not going to have an addition, we thought made some sense. And I think with the latest draft of the ordinance, staff has been okay with that. Am I getting that right, Jerome?
Yes.
Okay, great. Another recommendation, and this was following the lead of other municipalities whom we've interviewed. Many municipalities are moving away from going to less intense parking requirements. And certainly, I think the challenges in Reading, one is just getting more people to live downtown. So, for example, in Borough Pottstown, different scale certainly, they've eliminated any parking requirement for the adaptive reuse of existing buildings. So we made some recommendations along that line, and I think staff has decided to keep the process that they've put in place, where there are substantial reductions in parking that can be allowed based upon various provisions in the zoning and saldo. So I think we're headed, our recommendation and staff's approach, we're headed in the same general direction, just a different way to get there. So that was a suggestion that we made, that staff has decided to go a little different direction, to go in the same general direction. And then the other thing that we thought is a really helpful thing that you do now, and it was just mentioned by someone during the McDonald's review, was your one-stop meeting application process. And we think this is really helpful because, hopefully most applicants agree to come in and do that on their own. But we were wondering, is there a way to make that mandatory? Because we think that's a very, very helpful thing. And we likened it to, in some municipalities, a sketch plan application is mandatory, where you come in even before you do any preliminary engineering to go over an application for land development or special exception with the municipality. We thought that would be good, and also to develop a checklist for each application, that each approval that's sought, especially including special exceptions or conditional uses. So the applicant leaves the meeting with a good understanding of exactly what's required to advance the application. I think, and certainly Jerome, remember if you want to comment on this, staff hasn't changed this. I don't know if you saw that was sort of a logistical or a legal problem doing that, but you know, we think it's something that maybe still has some merit as you go forward. I don't know if you guys want to comment on that one.
I'm not aware of anything legally that would stop us from making that mandatory. That would be something I'd have, or Michelle, I don't know if you know if that would be anything, or is that something I should take up with Fred?
I'd probably be the better person to consult on that with, because it's gonna, myself and or Mike Gumbar, because it's more of a land use issue.
Okay.
I would have a concern, again, I echo it, One Stop started when I was employed with the city. I had my doubts about it at first, but it has been a tremendous tool. I've been on both sides of the table with it. I don't see if that is something we can legally require under the MPC. I mean, ultimately, if you think it through, how do you deny a plan? On what basis do you deny a plan for not going to One Stop? I think you have to sell it to people and be like, your project's going to go a lot easier if you come in. I think the
Yeah,
other
that's
side
it,
of that
that's-
is,
Oh, no, go ahead.
the other side of that is making sure we get everybody in City Hall to buy into the One Stop, but that's another issue.
Well, yeah, that is an issue. I mean, if it's not required, then by the applicant, then it might not be mandatory by the employees either. In other words, everybody sees it as a nice to have, but not necessary. And, you know, I've had one experience with it, you know, from the landowner's side, and you know, it didn't seem to me like the right people were all there. And it didn't seem to me to be the case where whatever opinions were given were actually definitive. Right. So you got some conversation, you know, there were 3 fire people in the room and none of them needed to be there, and they were kind of annoyed that they got asked to come, you know, it's sort of, you know, and maybe they won't go to the next one, you know.
Yeah, I think that from a One Stop, and this is kind of off topic, but I think there needs to be a
Yeah.
checklist as to what the project is and who needs to be there and scheduling it.
Yeah.
But
So.
I will look into that
currently, how
issue
the
as
ones-
I'll look into it as
Oh,
far
go
as
ahead, sorry.
requiring it as part of the land development. I don't see under the MPC how we can do that.
Yeah. Okay. I think.
And then
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the way that our one stops are, I don't know when you got, had a one stop, Peter, but I know that recently, fire actually prefers to do the one stop than not. Because a lot of times, some owners, when they come in with projects, they're not aware of fire requirements, or they start projects and things like that, and then the fire marshal had no idea of what these projects were. We also do have a new building chief official that he comes on to the one stops now. So everyone is there. If we also, if it's anything that would require any kind of like health permit, we would involve then our health inspector from property maintenance, or if it's a property, maybe if it's on the blight list or something like that, we'd have the manager from property maintenance come on. So we involve every department pretty much in these one-stop meetings. We highly encourage them. We tell people this is where you're gonna get all your information to determine whether or not you even want to start the project. A lot of owners aren't aware of some of the financial investment that they need to put into it. But yeah, Michelle, if you could let us know if there's anything, if we'd be able to make it mandatory, I'm sure we could figure out a way to work it logistically, but we, at least us in the zoning office, we very much strongly recommend it.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, because again, I think it's a great process.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, thanks for those comments. Our thought was, just like a sketch plan is mandatory in some municipalities, maybe this fits into the same legal framework. I don't know what the penalty would be if somebody didn't comply with that. Or maybe there's an incentive to come in for the one stop, that maybe part of a fee would be waived or something further down the process. But the other reason, and we talked about this a little bit at one of our meetings with staff, was, you know, and every municipality I've worked in, every developer applicant always complains about the municipal process. But the perception of having a business-friendly environment is important to start that conversation with applicants. So we think the one-stop meeting process is a very business-friendly way to approach applicants in a way that may be helpful to them, because from my limited experience over the years, most problems are result of poor communication on one end or the other. And this might have some ability to make that communication a little better. But, you know, it's something for future consideration, and certainly it's out there if you want to pursue it.
Yeah, hold on, Peter.
Yeah, Will was just saying that, he shares the same idea as Peter about maybe, incentivizing them with the one stop, either with fees or some other method.
Okay, so for future consideration, and we'll include it in our report as we go forward.
Peter, did anyone get,
Yes,
Peter,
sir.
did anyone get back to you on substituting the three of the, at least, well, the four of the cities you had mentioned or referenced in the report were Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Phoenixville, and Pottstown, which at staff level, we felt that they may or may not be appropriate to compare Reading to. And we thought that Lancaster, Scranton, and Harrisburg would be better examples of similar sized cities. At least two of those have train stations. And York was the other one, yeah.
Okay. We can certainly reach out to those places. You mentioned Lancaster, Harrisburg, York, and what was the fourth?
It was Lancaster, Scranton, Harrisburg, and York.
Okay. Okay,
And
we
those
can.
are in closer proximity, and they're of the same scale. And it looks like only Scranton is the only one that doesn't have a train station.
But they might.
But they don't.
If we don't, they might in the future. They're on the, they are on the 2035 plan for Amtrak to connect to New York.
Right. Okay, we can try to reach out to folks there. Thank you. Okay, if there are no other comments on that piece, I can move on. So the next steps in our TOD were, I mean, now that we've hopefully made at least a few reasonable and useful recommendations with the adaptive reuse, to move on to the concept of a TOD overlay, and that is that your existing zoning, you know, encourages the density and the types of uses that you want to have in the downtown. And then how do you go about making that, incentivizing that? Stantec's previous downtown strategic plan, you know, did some conceptual studies about, you know, locations for new housing or other types of commercial locations. These are just some illustrations from that study. And we think, and talking to JB Riley in Allentown up at City Center, he mentioned that some of the projects they worked on were in coordination with the Allentown Parking Authority, and certainly Sarah, who I'm drawing a blank on her last name, is part of your staff and consultant staff, has had some experience
Hailstone?
up there. Yeah, Hailstone. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the things that, again, this is not part of the ordinance writing, and it's a little bit beyond our scope, but we have to think of these pieces, is, you know, you've got a number of surface lots in the city. They actually are more heavily used in some of your garages because people prefer to go to surface lots often than garages. But, you know, the surface lots have a limited, we think, benefit in terms of the city, and they are in fact vacant places where new construction could happen for, you know, housing or mixed uses. And so with the former director of the RPA, Nathan Matz, we talked to him about that. We're going to reach out to the new executive director, Raphael Batista have that conversation with him too. But we think the parking authority could sell and or lease some of these lots to developers as interest rates hopefully get better, and as the adaptive reuse market brings more residents to existing buildings to live. So we think this is an opportunity that could happen, and it you know, it makes some sense in that you're not tearing down buildings to build new ones, at least in this case. So, and it's been done in other cities. And Sarah Hailstone's a very good resource for that because she's worked on some of that. So that's an opportunity out there. And the other thing I'll mention is your parking study that you did a few years ago showed that your parking, especially your garages, are underutilized. So you even though on the street, it doesn't seem like some days you have a surplus of parking. In fact, that study showed that you do.
Well, there's a number of things that we need to talk to the parking authority about that. The parking authority, number one, does not properly maintain their parking garages. So that's why people park on surface lots. In fact, I was, where was I? Oh, I was at Reed Street yesterday. The top 2 floors are cordoned off. You can't even get to the top 2 floors. I assume that that's because it's not maintained and it's dangerous to go up there. The Franklin Washington parking garage is just a mess because all the windows are broken. It looks like a slum area because they refuse to maintain their parking garages. And the other problem that I mentioned, actually I was very adamant about this during the parking study, is that they're idiots. And I use this term, they're idiots, that their monthly parkers get to use the first 2 floors of parking garage. They get to use the first 2 floors of the parking garage, and they're not required to use the upper floors of the parking garage. Because if you're going to incentivize people to use parking garages, you're not going to go all the way to the 5th floor and use the elevator that oftentimes doesn't work.
Or smells of urine.
Yes, and that too, Peter. Like I said, proper maintenance of these garages, it should be their top responsibility, and they ignore it.
I do have 2 comments to add to that. In regards to the maintenance of the garages, I agree with that because city staff that works in City Hall parks at the Walnut and Poplar lot. That elevator has been out of order, I want to say at least a year, maybe better part of a year. It is completely blocked off. I saw people working on it for a couple months and it's still not operational. Another thing that I was thinking about is, yes, the garages may be underutilized. However, if you try to get parking whenever there's any kind of event, and God forbid there's more than one event going on. So if there's something at the arena and at the Performing Arts Center, there is no parking. Every single lot is full. So and also like reviewing zoning permits and stuff where they're leasing parking spaces from the Reading Parking Authority for residential purposes. These aren't reserved spots. These are, yes, you have a parking pass, you can park there. However, if, let's say you get home from work late, or you went out and you come back, and now the garage is full for an event, you can't park there. So I didn't know if that had been a consideration during these conversations, or what kind of processes they have to kind of avoid that, because it's kind of counterintuitive to say, okay, we're going to use these garages for residential purposes, but then not have those spaces reserved for the residents to use when they need them.
When you come home, there has to be a space.
Yeah. And that's even harder now that they're gateless entry. Like at least before, you could put in your pass and it would say full because there's technically a spot already reserved, but when it's gateless, how do they even monitor that? So just a few things that I thought about a few times. I wasn't sure if that had been in the talks at all.
Yeah, I think all good points, and certainly event and residential parking are not good bedfellows. Event and office parking work much better for the reasons that you mentioned, and certainly maintaining facilities are important. But in terms of new construction, if you look at the image here on the right, I mean, if there was a new residential tower built there, that would probably include parking with it. So that you know, even with there's a question: what's more important, having more people living in the downtown? I would say.
Well, the problem with that is that the three pictures that you're showing there are all in the commercial core. According to our zoning ordinance, all parking in the commercial core is handled by the parking authority. Are these people going to be able to, you know, now all of a sudden now, and when we've had this before with the Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
And it depends who the executive director is. Because the one executive director did not give up the Abraham Lincoln parking garage. When they got a new executive director, they gave it up. But the zoning ordinance says they weren't allowed to do that.
Okay, and you're describing a political problem, not a functional problem.
Right.
And so our job is to suggest functional fixes here. And I'm not saying the political problem is not a hard one to solve. All we're saying is here's a functional thing that could happen. For whatever reason, the garages are underutilized. If your parking garages were beautifully maintained, would they be full? My guess is, and again, I don't recall the exact numbers. My guess would be no, because the deficits were pretty high. And you know, the other thing that we've talked about sort of under our breaths a little bit is, while rail service to the city is going to be a net positive, it's probably, with the number of trips and the number of trains per day, at least in the next, let's say, decade, it's not going to be a game changer for the city of Reading. It's going to be a net positive. And what could be a game changer is getting more market rate housing downtown and more people living in the downtown, for, you know, because that stimulates more restaurants that are open more, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not by any means discounting all the issues that you folks just brought up with parking. And I think that, you know, the mayor and the executive director of the Reading Parking Authority, you know, they need to make decisions that are, you know, to the benefit of the whole city. And I've heard some people describe the parking authority as a cash cow for the city. Okay, is that the correct thing? I don't know. I'm not the one to answer that question. So, you know, it's a thorny issue. It's got many layers and
Well-
many moving parts.
Parking becomes a limiting factor in attracting business to downtown, and perhaps even, you know, market rate renters. So yeah, that's you know, any plan that we have that relates to downtown needs to include parking as a key component of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do kind of agree though that the parking garage is, you know, it's when you go to a surface lot, you can see if there's spaces available, if it's nice.
Right.
You know, when you pull into a parking garage, you know, the experience is they're dirty, and the first few floors are already occupied by renters of those spaces, and you have to keep going up and going up and going up.
And I don't think that's unique to Reading. I mean, you know, I mostly populate the parking garages in Philadelphia, so.
Yeah,
always rather park on a surface lot if it's available.
yeah, yeah,
But
right.
Yeah,
Two-
but I was just in Herndon, Virginia. These are beautifully immaculate parking garages, and the first floor is only for the restaurants that are there. The restaurants and the downtown businesses. And they even have specific garages that are for the people who work downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And we could do that here in Reading. But like I said, I think the biggest thing is that they're not maintained. And therefore most people find them unusable.
Yeah,
Two-
I think those are all good points, and I'm not disagreeing with any of them. All I'm saying is it's an issue that's bigger than the work we're trying to
Yeah,
do.
yeah, right.
I haven't got to digest the making the adapter for use, a permitted use, a use permitted by right in the commercial core. Are there going to be still parking requirements, or are we going to be adding to this problem?
Adding to the problem.
Okay, as long as we're all on the same page with that.
Well,
That-
it is typical in many cities in the US and around the world that, if there's parking available with a rented unit, then it is a higher priced unit and attracts people that can afford that. And there are others that don't want to own a car and don't care about the parking, or ride a bicycle or ride public transportation. It's usually the market that decides whether the parking is necessary to rent a unit, not the ordinance.
Right.
Right. And that is the direction a lot of places are going.
Yeah. You can go rent an Airbnb in London and there's no parking.
No covers the garages.
Oh, one thing that Will is commenting is just that, and again, I don't know if this falls under the scope of what you're doing, Peter, but just something to consider is that during snow emergencies or weather emergencies, the city typically, has been offering garages free of charge, to get people off the road, like
Mhm.
off the actual street. So I'm not sure if that's within your scope or something to be considered.
Just quickly, oh, go
Mhm.
ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Now, I was going to address an earlier comment by Emily, so I'll let you address this comment, then I'll go back to her comment.
Yeah, I think that's a normal practice in a lot of cities. It's a good one, but it's an operational issue. It's not a zoning or planning issue.
Okay.
And Emily, just quickly, and it is kind of off topic, but just maybe we can share this with the parking authority. There is technology out there that counts cars as you go in. My daughter attended the University of Tennessee. She didn't have to scan anything, but they had apps, they had counting numbers, with people coming in and out. So there is a way to do that technology wise without scanning.
That's another maintenance issue.
Right. I wanted to mention, no, that's supposed to be off topic, but I wanted to mention in response to her comment before I forgot about that.
Try the Philadelphia airport, see if those counters work.
Tennessee's pretty on point though, I will
I
tell you.
know, I know.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like anything. If it's not maintained, it's
Yeah.
useless, right?
Yeah.
Come on in.
I think these are all really important issues regarding parking. And again, they relate to operational, political will, and quality of life issues that are very, very important. So we'll make note of those and certainly we'll mention them to the new parking authority director when we talk to him.
Excellent.
Okay.
Simon?
Yes, maybe about parking. For me, coming in as a new employee in the city, I felt very bad when I realized that we are losing money, especially with parking, because when I came in the first time, I parked my car, I paid using my card. That did not reflect, and I got a ticket I did the second time, I also got a ticket, but now the third time I was scared coming in simply because I was worried I was going to get a ticket. So maybe as we talk about this, we should think about the technology we're using as well, because if you look at the machine and the app which we're using, that aspect of compatibility is not working very well. Also, probably as we think about that, it is an area we need to think about as well.
Mhm. Yeah, real-time
and,
availability is helpful.
Yes, some of the points that were discussed, specifically the ones that you had made, Michelle, yeah, we debated them at staff level. And then look back at recommendations that were produced in other plans, the downtown plus plan, as well as the parking plan, which made that recommendation about come into the city and we'll deal with the parking as a secondary problem versus the primary problem.
My father always told me parking's the primary problem. And he's been a developer, he was a developer for 50 years.
So there's
Yeah,
some that will agree and some will disagree.
But for every truism, you can look at places like Boston, which has pretty much let the market determine parking, and they've been very successful with redevelopment things. So again, it's what people in this particular area are used to. I think it's again, as I mentioned, it's a really important issue. Needs more study and more thought, and I think we'll do our best to mention the issues. We're not going to solve the problem, but at least we can suggest ways. I mean, even if you took, I mean, you know, a simple way to look at it, if you took a big surface lot and made it into a parking garage, if you really have a deficit of parking in the city, boy, you could increase it in one lot by, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times. So, I mean, there are all kinds of things to look at with parking.
I think with this discussion, it would have been nice if somebody would have told me that there's a new executive director at the parking authority, but no one ever did. Yeah, another internal communication problem here at the city. I think we're going to have to invite the new executive director to a workshop and discuss these issues. Because this has been a very, very good discussion and maybe not on point for this particular plan, but it's very on point to something we've been working on for a long time. And I thank you, Peter, for bearing with us.
No, this is good. And I just read an article about Mr. Batista, and he said he was appointed, as you may not know, basically January 1st, and he said he wanted 6 months to come up with a plan. So the timing is coming up soon, where, at least based upon what I read in the newspaper, he's, you know, going to have some thoughts to share with you and others in the city pretty soon. Okay, I'll move on then. So the last piece here is approach for this overlay. And as I mentioned, a lot of what you have in the ordinance already is really good. And then to create a TOD overlay, the reason to do that is not only to encourage more redevelopment, and I think that's going to be in the form of new construction in the years ahead, but what things would benefit the city, the quality of life, the projects, and we've listed some of them here: architectural design standards, better streetscaping, lighting, outdoor dining accommodations, common open space or civic plazas, even public open space above street level. Public open space doesn't have to happen only at the street level. And we can see examples. If you've been to the Sierra Center in Philadelphia and West Philly, they have a very successful civic space that's above a parking garage. That's very cool. And then workforce housing is discussed earlier. And then the other thing is working with the Reading Housing Authority or others, developers who specialize in subsidized housing. There's no reason why, and I think there's a great interest in the city of Reading, and rightfully so, to provide for new housing for people of lower income. And there's no reason why they should be left out of the mix here. And it might even take the form of senior housing in some places. So I think those are all opportunities that could happen. And just as an example, if the city and the parking authority made a site that's presently a surface parking lot available for, let's say, low income housing or lower income housing or subsidized or senior housing, that could be a way to reduce the cost of building that. Because you take the cost of the land out of the equation. But that again is a big decision. And I just throw it out there as maybe an option. So these are some of the things that the city could benefit from the overlay, but how do we convince applicants and developers to do that? And what are the incentives for the private sector? And we're just getting into this now because this is the second part of our work. Some of the incentives might be increased height. That's probably going to be a marginal benefit because you already allow for pretty tall buildings. Perhaps a smaller required site area per dwelling unit. That might be an incentive. Not a smaller unit, just a smaller site area per dwelling unit. Perhaps increased maximum impervious coverage. You're pretty high in some of your districts already, but there's nothing to prevent you from going to 100% because you still have to control the stormwater. You still have to detain it. You still have to meet all the regulatory requirements.
Most of them are at 100% already anyway.
Yeah, I think a couple are maybe 90. There could be some.
Actually, I think our MS4 requirements tell us that we have to actually reduce those areas that are at 100%.
Okay.
We're mostly going with underground storage.
Okay, Josh. Okay.
So yeah, there are subsurface requirements.
Okay, very good. That answered that question.
Okay, and you can also detain on roofs too, although that gets pricey.
Roofs.
Yeah. Parking incentives. Again, we talked a little bit about parking. Maybe there are other incentives going forward that can happen. And then some of the other thing we listed here and is relaxed ground floor standards. Right now in your adaptive reuse ordinance, you have some very specific formulas for what happens on the first floor. There's going to be a limit to how much commercial space you can do on ground floor. And certainly many cities have apartments on first floors. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And so maybe some relaxation with those formulas. And the other thing we're just starting to look into is the allowance of residential uses in the manufacturing commercial district and how that might take shape because they're right adjacent to the center of the city. So these are some of the things that we're starting to look at. We hope to come back to the Alliance and the staff in a month or so to run some initial ideas by you all. And hopefully we can get to a point where we advance this overlay idea. The other thing that is important, and we use, I mean, you can point to other examples, but with the discussion we had with City Center, they did something like 12 residential projects and they've had some success and they've got a much, I'll call it a more robust market in Allentown than you do in Reading, but they couldn't have done 9 of the 12 projects without the NIS that they have. So I know there is some work being done and I don't know the status of it with the city and the governor and folks in Harrisburg to look at what kind of financial incentives, additional ones could be put in place because they're going to be needed we think for new construction based on what's happened in other places. And then that last bullet there just says the partnership with the RPA could be important for new construction. So that's the work that we're getting into. Certainly anybody have a comment on that, be welcome.
Did you want to make a comment about the CRIZ, Peter? I think you're working on that.
Oh, sorry. Different Peter. Sorry.
Different Peter. Yeah, me, Peter. There's Mayor has appointed a working group, which I'm on. It's Ursula Torres and Deb Millman from the GRCA. This is the precursor to populating the authority, which exists on paper right now. This goes back to 2013 when the first iteration of the CRIZ occurred. I actually chaired the authority at that time. But we were not successful We were not one of the two cities selected in the state, and so, and no additional cities were added. Governor Wolf didn't like the program. What I was also part of the tour last week with Zeiger, Rick Zeiger, and it's not being openly discussed what the status of this program is or whether it will be restarted. The word is that there'll be new legislation to make significant modifications to the program, and that will probably be a long political process. And so if that's the case, I don't expect to see it for at least a year.
Mhm.
So
I did have,
hurry up and wait.
Peter Simone, I did want, just backtracking a little bit, so, cause I remember when you mentioned senior housing, there were 2 projects on your map in the beginning of the, presentation that were still pending CHB approval. Both of those have been approved, and the one on South Sixth Street is for, low-income senior housing.
Great. And that's who, you know, that I assume that's by a developer who specializes in that, or is that a housing authority?
Yes. No,
Okay.
that's a developer that specializes, yes.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Okay.
And we need that because as far as I know, the housing authority has a wait list at all of their facilities.
Okay. All right. Thanks for sharing that. So to wrap up, we're embarking on the second phase. As I mentioned, we're going to see City Council next week to give them sort of the wrap up, the summary that we just gave you tonight, and then David Meyer is going to feature the train station location work and some of our work in a community forum on the 25th. I think that happens at 11:30 there. So appreciate everybody's time and the discussion. Please feel free to reach out to us anytime. We've been appreciate the time that Jerome and Emily and others on staff have spent with us. It's been really helpful for us to understand how the process works in the city of Reading, and certainly look forward to continue to work with everyone.
Any other comments from the commissioners?
I think it's a great idea to create this overlay. I like it.
Go ahead, Jerome.
Oh, that's all I have.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again, Mr. Simone. We really appreciate you dropping by again. And I guess you'll be back one more time at least?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks again, and have a great evening.
Okay, thank you all.
Okay. Next, we have stormwater management amendments.
There is no update to that, unless Simon has something.
Well, what happened is, stormwater management, I had a call with Timothy, and he said he would like us to have it here for information purposes. Whatever revision was done was put on the FTP site, and he's like, let it be there so that as we continue, we keep it in mind, so we don't do it. But other than that, there's no real update in addition to.
There will be a time when you are asked to make an official recommendation to city council, so yeah, you can get familiar with it from the FTP site, and then when as long as it's on the agenda, and we keep it on the agenda, if you have any questions, we can ask Tim when he's available at our meetings. You're muted, Peter.
I'm sorry. I'm
Oh,
on the phone at the same time, trying to not commingle conversations here.
No problem,
I
Peter.
saw your lips
No problem at all. We just saw your lips move, that's all. Okay, stuff. Okay, update on the draft planning commission annual report.
So you have a draft report that was submitted on March 25th. some things we're pretty sure of. There are other things that we're not completely sure of. Most of the items in sections A, B, and C and D, we are pretty sure of. However, you'll see little yellow highlights that are identified mostly for resolution numbers. And unfortunately, when Brandy had left us, we kind of dropped the ball on that again. And it happened before Brandy, where
Naomi.
yeah, where Naomi was keeping track of that. And so hopefully we can get those all filled in. If we can for some reason, then we'll just eliminate the resolution criteria.
But I am working on those resolution numbers. I got through January today. After I actually got the paperwork arranged properly, so I know what's going on. And can go back and double check everything, so.
And then if Simon can then learn from you on how the assignments are made, then Simon can then take over
Yeah.
from that point.
Yeah, then we can begin to work on 2024. So
So the other items that are just left available were section D, which are plans denied, and I think I got them all. But we had 5 plans denied. Last year we had, I think, just 1 or 2, so we had 5 this time. And in section E, we had conditional use applications. I believe we just had 3 for the record. In section F, municipal plans, reports, and ordinances, we had amendments to the zoning ordinance, which we're all familiar with. We had amendments to the Saldo, which we're all familiar with. Don't forget, we also had revisions to the wireless communication facilities. We vacated Thorn Street. We also had discussions for 12th Street traffic study, which I kind of left blank to be filled in. Community assessment report, which was the prelude to the comprehensive plan. And of course, we identified the city comprehensive plan. And we also reviewed the Muhlenberg-Laureldale joint comprehensive plan. If there are any other activities that you saw that would fit under the section F category, we'll gladly add to those.
Do you have the Church Street vacation?
Yep.
I think that was when Randy or something, I'm not exactly sure, but that was the one for the Birch Street car wash and storage that they were vacating.
Yes,
yeah, that's the important one.
we just added one right now. And then section G is planning resolutions and meeting minutes, which I think we are pretty well straightforward. Items that may be lacking are in section G. And that's planning commission projects and activities, in which we briefly listed the planning commission workshop meetings that we have had, and I'll attempt to introduce what the subject matters were on some of those meetings. We've had a number of people come to us in the past. Training opportunities that you may have taken advantage of. I like to list in that section as well. Peter, you're involved with the Blighted Properties Committee. If there are other committees that I'm missing, we should add those to it. Once we have all that, we will have a pretty much a we will have
What was
a
that? The rehab?
Not the greenhouse.
Oh, greenhouse.
Oh, yeah, Greenhouse Committee. Will and I are
Okay.
sort of members on that one. It's an ad hoc committee, but.
Doesn't have to be tonight. If you have something in the next week or so, please send it to me. And we will get to it. If you want to go over it thoroughly tonight, we could do that. My objective is to have this in a final draft for you to consider and adopt at your meeting on the 30th. So I'd like to, within the next week, get your comments, then I'll have a week to put everything together. And then you'll have another week to look at it before your meeting, since we're going to, our meeting's gonna be on April 30th. So, how does that sound?
That sounds good.
And then we go to council on May 5th.
6th or something like that, yeah.
6,
Six, and go to council.
unless you wanna come in on Sunday.
So how's that sound for a game plan?
Does anyone at this time have any comments about the annual report?
Just a quick question. I know I'm going through a number of, documents, but I just wanted to check whether there are points where we can identify or find some of that information for us to have them in memory as the council also looks at them.
Oh. You'll learn from Wayne. Wayne does an excellent job on presentation.
Oh, yeah. I've been doing this a while now.
So, Wayne takes the lead on the presentation. Simon, you and I will be there as support. In case there's a question that is asked that Wayne doesn't know the answer to it immediately, but and then that way you'll be able to learn from this exposure. But usually the presentation is provided, and we'll be able to, everything we did is in this report in one way or another. Either plans we denied, plans that are still pending, plans that are been approved. And then all these other activities.
Yeah, and I think in the past 2 years, we've made some impact on council. Maybe not because of myself, but at least I've been able to bridge the gaps over time. So that's been helpful since we don't think we've had someone in planning last an entire year for the past few years.
If we have extra time, sometimes what we did was included this as part of the PowerPoint. And included just pictures of some of these other projects. So that's something that can be added.
Yeah, generally we don't do a presentation. We could, but
there's a lot
mostly
of,
it's me talking.
there's a lot of information in our report, especially this year and last year. Previous year before that, it was a lot of activity. But then if you go back 5-10 years, there wasn't a lot of activity. So there was the opportunity to provide fluff.
Yeah, but yeah, so for example, when I do my presentation, I kind of group the projects in certain ways and talk about certain things. I will actually, the 2020, I actually had the speech written, typed out, so I'll send that to you.
Thank you, that was my question.
And then you can do it next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so here, we will move on to, let's see here, next planning commission meeting is for April 30th. We are, part of that, I don't know if it's on the agenda, but we have to choose chairman and vice chairman. I'm willing to do it again for another year because everybody's pretty busy. Peter's very busy with his stuff. I'm sure James is quite busy. And unless Nelson wants to become chairman.
2 thumbs up.
You got that right. No, thank you. I'm still learning.
Personally, I think
Yeah,
we're
it was-
functioning well, so I'm happy with
Yeah.
how we're organized.
So
I
the,
I spent 7 years before I became chairman the first time around.
yeah.
And Will, would you like to continue with vice chairmanship?
Yeah, thank you. I'm good with the keeping things the way they are when you as the chairman and, I'll let Emily relay that. Go ahead.
that he's okay with,
Yeah.
with that. Everyone in the room can hear you, it's those on Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he's good with how everything is functioning now with you as chairman and.
Okay, great.
And Will's buying dinner.
There's other offices like secretary.
There's actually other offices, but we haven't voted on them in years.
Yeah, there are other offices, but we haven't voted on them.
Because the idea was that we were supposed to change the bylaws 10 years ago and we never got around to it.
They're obsolete, but we still have them.
Yeah, they're obsolete, but they're still in the bylaws.
I would recommend that we review those, you know, as, and also to try to state, you know, a mission for the, you know, for the planning commission. What is our purpose? Try to put that down in writing so we have that to refer to if we get,
I will get you that paperwork because we actually do have all of that
yeah, okay.
somewhere in my archives.
Yeah. Well, I think to reaffirm the mission, you know, we can also use that to you know, tell the city, hey, this should be something that we get included in order for us to fulfill our mission. That sort of argument, you know, you know, this train station selection or this overlay or, you know, stuff. It seems to me like we are discussing more broad topics that pertain to planning, and that's really great. I think it would be useful for me to know exactly what our purview is.
Our original purview that was given to us by council in 1923 is pretty broad.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
I would,
maybe we want to, you know, refine the wording since maybe it's in Old English or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so I'll get that together and
Would
we
you-
can start working on that because Simon is here now. We can think about that.
Yeah.
and maybe as part of that, maybe Jerome and possibly Shannon can do like a municipalities planning code refresher. Cause that's where a lot of your
Oh,
duties
yeah.
come from.
Right.
Yeah, if it comes straight out of there, that's fine too.
Yeah, for the most part, there is under Article
5, I think it is.
5 subdivision land development. I think it might be 4.
Yeah, it's 4 or
Well,
5.
anyway,
I
there's a section that's completely designated for the purpose and intent of a planning commission on how the appointees are made and what their general purposes.
9 times out of 10, I can reach my book with the municipalities planning code, but I have it in my car from meetings this week, so.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good idea.
Sounds great. Okay, 2 things I wanted to bring up, in case we know anything about them. The sale of the properties at 5th and Penn. Does anybody know what's going on with that?
I know a little bit.
Oh, great.
I met the gentleman from the firm, the Philadelphia firm, who's the developer, Ken Weiselman or something like that. Anyway, it's a Philadelphia developer. They have a contract on the property. I don't think it's closed, and I think there's a pending item is an appraisal, which is always interesting. This is a real developer, not like the ones that are doing the Madison building and the Berkshire building and other. These guys are for real. They know what they're doing, and they have a pretty good plan. I would say, you know, this mixed use with the bank building being, you know, TBD, whether it's some sort of restaurant or food venue or what it becomes exactly. The 3 facades to the left of the bank building, they will be maintaining the facades, but likely putting a parking garage behind them. And that's about as much as I know.
It's more than what was mentioned in the newspaper, so that's good. That's
But yeah, I talked to the gentleman for quite a while. They're seem like fine people.
great. Next thing, Simon and I discussed this the other day, and I passed it, and it reminded me, the Perks Engineering Building on the corner of Sixth and Chestnut Streets. There are two huge signs up there about community meetings for turning that building into senior housing.
Yeah, that's the one that I had mentioned that got approved through ZHB.
And it did get approved through ZHB. Okay, so wonder where their land development plan is.
Hasn't been submitted. They know they need one. I think that the reason for it kind of sped through for ZHB was because they needed to get that approval in order to get certain kinds of funding. And so I think they were finishing up their funding sources before they submitted for land development.
We'll also try to get New Cold here for a workshop session.
Yeah, they actually, so last week the decision was rendered. New Cold did get their height variance for their tower. So they should be coming in at some point.
So yeah, I'd like to keep the door open for them.
Yeah, we should keep the door open for them because we need to discuss with them, and it probably will not impact them from what I understand, but I just want to double check because the sewer comes across there and through that property.
Yeah.
And also we discussed at that one meeting about the Schuylkill Trail going through there.
Deb Hogue is familiar with that, and the Schuylkill Trail, people are aware of that as well.
Yeah, so these are all good things to discuss. So. All right, anybody else have anything for the good of the order?
I just have a question. There's a house being built on 1202 Parkside Drive South, which is across the street from the museum. And that was an empty lot. It's been empty for at least 15 years or so. I was just wondering whether we would have seen that development plan. We would not have. Okay.
No, Tim Kroll does get involved because there would be some, for storm management and stuff like that, but it would not require land development.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Yeah. That's it.
Okay. With that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Thank you, Peter. Second?
Second.
Okay, Nelson? All right. Question on the motion? All
No
those in
question.
favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, and I heard Will on the phone, so we are unanimous that we are out of order. And once again, I thank everyone very deeply for coming to these workshop meetings, because I think they're doing great things for all of us and the planning commission as a whole.
Just a reminder, we have Kim Murphy coming next month.
That's right.
That's right.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, I forgot about that too.
For the workshop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,